I always love to share stories of what God is doing and has done in people's lives. And Greg Ewing is in. You and I were kind of emailing back and forth, and you mentioned God had done something pretty big in your life that you wanted to share.
Yeah. Back in 2021, just surprisingly had a widowmaker in our home. And before I knew it, I was on an ambulance being rushed here to Palatka. I was in the hospital just briefly here. I had passed away, I think, 2 or 3 times in the process of just getting over here to Palatka, and ended up in Shands. They had airlifted me up to UF Health Shands in Gainesville. And the whole time that I was in the hospital, each time, I ended up listening to the app for the radio station and just praising God through the process and listening to the great blessed words and everything that's provided through the station. A couple months later, I ended up back in the hospital with a 10-week stay and 2 open heart surgeries within 2 weeks. During that 10-week stay, I would have the radio station playing in the hospital room, and some of the technicians and nurses and different doctors and people would come in, and they'd hear the radio station playing, and we would talk about their faith. And so it was really, in one of the worst times of my life, it was a joyous occasion because you could talk with someone and share with them your faith. And the radio station, Hope FM, really brought that in to a great place in our lives. We had listened to it here at our home, but there in the hospital room, it was a great help. And they'd see me reading my Bible, and they'd say, I'll come back. And I would say, no, come on in. And we'd have good conversation. And I was on life support at one time. My heart wasn't doing well. It wasn't getting any better. So they put 2 pumps in my heart, and I had to live with those pumps for a year. And so I was in the hospital and out of the hospital and back and forth. And music has always just been one of those great, magically blessing elements of God's creation to me. And the radio station here has just been a phenomenal part of my healing. And not only that, but just keeping my spirits in check, and the music and all of the things that you guys talk about in your programming, the various different things, just been wonderful. Wow. And then after I came home, at one point, I received a telephone call that I had that there was a heart and a kidney for me, and they wanted to know how quickly I could get up to the hospital. So we got up to the hospital. I had the heart and kidney transplant on the 23rd and 24th 24th and 25th of this month. It'll be my 3rd year anniversary of receiving the heart and kidney. And so we actually celebrate my birthday. It'll be my 3rd birthday. But when I knew I was getting the heart transplant, I went up there and listened to music in my room and just hung on to hope and to Hope FM in the process. So,
wow.
Yeah.
What an amazing story. Sometimes when you go through difficulties, it can be hard to really live out your faith. You can say you believe all these things when things are going great and it's a sunshiny day, but let it start raining. And sometimes we look to all these other places and we sort of forget. We have the God of the universe that will draw close to us. And oftentimes, like you said, it's music. It's those praise and worship songs that let you pour your heart out to the Lord, ask for his help. And he shows up in those moments.
Yeah, he certainly does. I mean, there were so many times when we were just amazed beyond description. I still, even 3 years after having the transplants, I still have a hard time wrapping my head around how God answered all of our prayers. And we have 2 young children. They're married, but they're still young to us, And I wanted to be able to stay around, and I wanted to be here for my wife, and I wanted to still experience life as it would go on. And I felt a little selfish about, praying for that, knowing that I was saying, no, I didn't want to go to heaven, but can I stay here? And I was praying, but people would walk in and we'd have conversations and they'd say something, or I'd listen to a song specifically, and it would just answer that particular question on my mind or whatever. And it was definitely a reinforcement for me to have the music playing all the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's just such an encouragement to us because,
Yeah.
we do what we do, and we hope that people are listening and receiving and enjoying it and using
Yeah.
it. And so you come in and say, yes, I'm doing
Yes.
what you're hoping is I'm using your station for
Yeah.
encouragement, and you're even sharing it with other people, and even being out of town and listening on our app and sharing it with people, and them recognizing that you are a child of God. They walk into your
Yes.
hospital room and you're not miserable and mean and who knows what that sometimes can happen when you're in that situation, but you were
Yeah.
turning around and blessing those people that were
Yeah.
there to attend to you.
Yeah, I had my moments. There were times when I didn't know what was going on. There were times when I was actually failing to a degree where, people get agitated, and there's certain things that are characteristic of your body failing, and I don't even remember a lot of those things that happen. But my wife can tell you about those on a different day. But she can tell you that the nurses and the technicians that would come in, the respiratory therapists or the X-ray technician, the gentleman who sat with me 24/7 while I was on the life support machine, he was there with me, and they would literally come in for their shifts and say, "I want Mr. Ewing. Can I have him today? Oh, I didn't have him. I haven't had him in a couple of days. Can I have him?" And they wanted to be in there, and I think it was because they had, contrasting types of experiences. And I did find it to be an incredible experience for me as a Christian. I've been a Christian for a long time. I became a Christian when I was 9 years old. But the experience of being in the hospital and going through what I went through, some of the other things that we've gone through in our life, God's always been there for us. And through music, we're reminded of Scripture. So much music actually is developed from a Scripture or developed from a particular book or story. And it reminds us of those things. And it's amazing how God can come through a radio station and give you the particular song you need at that particular moment. And as we drove in to meet with you today here this morning, we saw your billboard again on 19 where it reminds you of the app. And I've talked to people at our church about how, if you're dealing with issues and troubles, put that music on. Listen to music, have the radio station going, use the app. It will help you in ways you don't know, because so many people will go to the Bible and they don't know which page, which book, what verse should I look at right now in my particular circumstance. But God came through for us and helped us to be inspired, and not only that, but people find being in a hospital is a terrible situation, no matter whether they're in there to get their tonsils removed or whether they're in there to get a heart transplant, and there you can pass the time with the joy of music and the hope that comes through through all the songs. So,
wow, that is just beautiful. And I appreciate you sharing that with us, not only to encourage us and our staff, which of course we'll share this with, but
Sure.
To remind our listeners that, maybe you just listen for a few minutes here and there when you're in your car, or you put it on because it's more positive than something else that could be on. But there's really a lot more there that's available 24/7.
That's
And
for
so,
sure.
Thank
Even
you.
the interviews with the musicians that you have, the various different programming you have, it's just a wonderful thing. We just really do appreciate Hope FM.
Well, thank you so much for
You're
sharing
very
that.
welcome. You're very welcome.